Transformers. Transgender. This thing basically just writes itself. However, we're not talking about the entirety of this franchise about robots in disguise, who can transform between their more humanoid robot forms into various vehicles or dinosaurs or electronic gadgets or sort of just whatever the hell they want.
Megatron, you've got to transform!
No, we're talking about one specific, super recent entry into the series, that of Transformers Earthspark, a kids animated show that started in late 2022 and is currently on its second season, released literally a month or so ago. It was also released and produced with Nickelodeon's support, because of course it was. So many of these damn kids TV series that I cover are done by Nickelodeon, to the point that I think they really are showing up the competition in regards to including trans representation at all. Especially after Owl House got canned by Disney.
I don't know who you are, but you are a riot.
So what is Transformers Earthspark about then? What's the brief summary so you can go into the more nitty-gritty trans stuff without feeling a tad lost? Well, it's the story of how things develop after the space bridge to Cybertron gets destroyed. The space bridge being something that was first in the original Generation 1 cartoons and effectively caused the entire civil war between the Autobots and Decepticons to occur on Earth. So you might be thinking, okay, with that bridge gone, then I guess that would mean that war is over. So what is this, like a slice of life show about how Transformers get by no longer needing to be soldiers? And the answer to that is kinda, but also no.
You guys are everywhere.
While Megatron and some of the Decepticons have become good guys now, some of the others are still wanting to be all evil, and there are new threats popping up. The series itself mostly centers around the Molto family and the Terran Transformers, the name that is given to those second-generation Transformers who are born on Earth, which get adopted into the family when the children discover them and bond to them.
How do we know their names?
I think we're connected to them?
Now, the one that we are hyperfixating on for the purpose of this video is Nightshade Molto, who entered into the grander knowledge of people because they were the first Transformers character to be non-binary, which, as you might have guessed, did upset a lot of right-wing people and lead to some negative reactions because, I don't know, culture war bullshit. It's always the same stuff, you know?
Has recently gone through a rebrand, and now they're the transgenders.
Regardless, we're going to talk more about that after we discuss the character themselves. So let's get into Season 1's Episode 10, Age of Evolution Part 2. Oh, actually, one more thing before I go off Queen. I just want to reiterate here that I want to focus upon a singular Transformers character, that I will not be doing a larger discussion about the queerness that exists within Transformers, and that if you want to educate yourself further on that, there will be links below in a section dedicated to it for that exploration. Other people have done this better than me, go look at them. But not many of them discussed Nightshade Molto, because Nightshade Molto wasn't out yet as a character. And I don't mean out in the LGBTQ sense, I mean it in the this is a really recent series that many older discussions did not have access to when they were making their points. Regardless, Season 1 Episode 10 Part 2 begins where the first part left off, as Ghost and the Autobots with Megatron publicly announce their alliance before it all goes to shit when Mandroid attacks them. Also, I just want to say that the music and the animation of this show is really, really cool. It's got that, like, techno vibe to it, and the style is that kid cartoon, but more effort put into it than what I've seen in other similar shows like Paw Patrol or whatever. I also genuinely like the way it strafes the line between serious commentary / showcasing of danger, and also comedic timing and funny dialogue.
But still, get a new grudge.
They can have my fist!
It's actually genuinely not a bad show, and I would say check it out if you got kids this age, or if you're an adult who enjoys child animated series. Also, cool commentary on disabilities, so thumbs up immediately right there.
Me too. I judge a person by their actions, not their prosthetics.
Regardless, a big part of the first part is that the kids plus the Terrans discover some more Terrans, one of which is Nightshade Malto. Terrans are a pretty big deal, especially to Mandroid and the Autobots, because they are fresh and new Transformers born from some pretty special circumstances, and so these extra ones appearing are a big deal because up until this point it had just been two summoned by kids touching a crystal. So when the kids, during a desperate moment while under attack from Mandroid's little bug droids, call upon the creator of the crystals to help them, it spawns in a bunch more of these Terrans who, when they manage to bust the Malto family out of the cave-in caused by some of the Decepticons' missiles, get introduced to Optimus and Bumblebee.
Welcome, young ones. I am Optimus Prime. It warms my spark to meet you.
It's during these introductionary scenes that we get the scene we care about here, the one that stands out as something of relevance off the bat. Right after the one where all the other new Terrans are getting given their names, and Nightshade immediately already knows what their name is, being the extra little queer fuck that they are. I mean, come on, that shit just writes itself.
And I am Nightshade. It is a delight and a surprise to meet you all.
But when Optimus is attempting to address Nightshade, is trying to give across some information, there is a pause before the usage of pronouns. A pause that is filled by Mo Malto telling Optimus Prime and the entire fucking audience straight up that Nightshade goes by they, them pronouns.
Can you switch,
Nightshade's pronouns are they, them.
Something which the Malto kids would know about their newly adopted siblings because of the connection that is forged through their cyber sleeves, and the fact that these kids sort of created these Cybertronians. One quick thing to explain here. The Terrans are all considered to be part of the Malto family because of the way that they were born. They all feel connections to the parents and to the human siblings forged by that, and also Nightshade reinforces this statement by their sister with the reiteration there that being called he or she just didn't make sense. It doesn't really click with how they view themselves. Optimus is obviously cool with this because he's a cool dude who even apologises for not being sure what pronouns to use.
My apologies. Please switch their piece.
A+ work here from Optimus in regards to showing all the people in the audience the nice and appropriate way to interact with trans people, especially trans kids, because if you're rude to kids, you're an even bigger tool than just being generally rude to trans people. Also, that is sort of all from this episode that relates to the thing we care about. I know, it's a small part. I mean, it's basically a single sentence and a mild statement around that, but it does cement quite clearly that non-binary identity for Nightshade compared to the other Autobots or Terrans, all of whom are perfectly comfortable with gendered pronouns and do indeed have/use them. It removes uncertainty about their queerness, and so immediately from that point onwards, any scene involving Nightshade involves a non-binary person, something which I think is really important for the queer kids in the audience who might connect with the character.
Holy smokes! Is every day like this for you?
They will get to see Nightshade not having to always fight for who they are, not always having to talk massively in detail about it, but still having the knowledge that their identity as non-binary does exist. It's the small thing that goes a long way towards incorporating a queer character into the narrative. And don't worry, while that is our first pit stop, it is far from our last, as we move now to episode 13 of season 1, a mere 3 episodes later, when Nightshade gets a significant amount of screen time and exploration of who they are tangentially connected to that non-binary identity. Oh, also, before we move on, I just want to take a second to talk about the fact that during a large part of the previous episode, the new Terrans just ride around on the back of Optimus Prime in some of the most awkward-looking positions. It's just funny as shit watching these characters that are all about turning into vehicles or animals or mobile forms just sort of hoisted up on someone else because they're freshly born and don't really know what they're doing with the whole transforming thing yet. Like, the next few episodes are dedicated to giving these Terrans their alt modes, as we will see very soon. Episode 13, Missed Connection, is all about Nightshade after all, and is sort of the dedicated episode dealing with how they get their alternate form, something which is also incorporated into big discoveries about themselves. Also, I cannot reiterate enough how fucking extra this character is. Like, my god, what a flamboyant queer, and I'm sort of here for it.
Boost the fan speed and live, my darling!
We've gone through the tunnel where flamboyance was stereotypical, and out the other end, where it's okay to have some queer characters be super over the top. Write that down. Regardless, what we see a lot of here in the opening is the fact that Nightshade, unlike the other kids, is super into technology and into making things, and the rest of them try to get Nightshade to come outside and have fun with them, but Nightshade is confused because, as far as they're concerned, staying in and working on dangerous malfunctioning technology is what they enjoy doing. Oh my god, I think they might be a trans person.
But I am having fun. Why don't you stay instead?
Nightshade then has a conversation with their parents about the fact that they do feel a lot like their other siblings don't understand them, that they don't get how they speak or what they like, and it feels like there is some missed connection there between the rest plus Nightshade, something which the parents try to alleviate by introducing Nightshade to the idea of fictional novels, hoping that they can find some of that missed connection within the characters that exist in these more fantastical worlds.
Something tells me it's right up your alley.
A piece of pretty good advice coming from a kid who was one of those children. I kind of connect with Nightshade here. I also had a lot of trouble talking to other children because it almost felt alien and like there was a barrier between me and them. A thing that I think might have had something to do with the whole being autistic thing, but I loved sci-fi and fantasy novels and would lose myself in them for hours, even creating whole worlds of my own to play with.
And Jesus wept. For there were no more worlds to conquer. Jesus wept! Stop saying Jesus wept.
And so I managed to avoid feeling lonely by doing that. Am I saying that Nightshade is coming off as coded autistic here because I see a bit of myself in them? Not necessarily. There are plenty of non-autistic kids who can find themselves in those exact same boots, but it also doesn't mean that Nightshade isn't autistic. And my own personal headcanon here is going to go with that, because I want to. I mean, a big part of this episode is how Nightshade literally reads a book once, and then immediately hyperfixates and makes it a huge part of their identity, wanting to track down the writer of the book so they could interact with them.
D.E. O'Neill, you have spoken to me in ways I didn't know were possible.
Oh, yeah, they autistic as fuck. So Nightshade goes to the cemetery thanks to information from Hashtag, and despite all the obvious stuff and the creepy music, doesn't put two and two together to think about the fact that if the last known address for a person is in a cemetery, then they might be dead. Before they discover a fancy-ass tomb with the owl present on the front cover of the book, a tomb that leads them to a holographic security guard that leads them to another open tomb within which resides a sinister Decepticon, the spider-like Tarantulas, which I know a bunch of you might recognize because he exists in a few other Transformers lore, but like, focus kids. Tarantulas captures Nightshade before identifying them as one of the Terrans and letting them go, explaining how they are not a typical Decepticon and just sort of want to create a human avatar and live amongst the humans as a normal person, something which is very different to the rest of the Decepticons.
I am not a typical Decepticon. I am Tarantulas.
Also, Nightshade does introduce themselves with saying that their pronouns are they/them again, so hell yeah, get that in there. Regardless, this is kinda cool for another reason, because it does showcase how there are Decepticons aside from Megatron who want to work with humans and be part of human society. It also showcases how a lot of these Transformers feel like they can't do this because of the human organization Ghost, which hunts them down and either makes them work with them against the bad Transformers or locks them up. Tarantulas doesn't want to be part of the war, they just want to get away from it, and somewhere in this feeling of being different, we see the fact that Nightshade and Tarantulas have some things in common. One of them being a love of science stuff, and the other being that they feel different to the rest of the people who are supposed to be like them.
Finally, after weeks of toiling, I may complete my work.
The rest of the family are kinda concerned about Nightshade because they don't understand them, despite the fact that Nightshade is super excited and having the time of their life helping Tarantulas. Tarantulas explains further how this technology will allow them to not be bound by restrictive labels anymore, that it will not force them to have to be an Autobot or a Decepticon, and how they will finally be free. Do you see? Do you see the connections that are getting made here?
I won't be bound by constrictive labels like Autobot or Decepticon anymore.
I mean, Nightshade then goes into figuring this out because as far as Nightshade is concerned, isn't this just Tarantulas hiding who they truly are behind the form of a human? And Tarantulas explains how when you have an alt form, you understand that having these forms, having these other ways to express yourselves, are not changing what you are, they are merely ways of facilitating your identity out into the world. This is an important lesson for Nightshade, because it really illustrates to them how an alternate form could be something they want in a way that the rest of the Autobots have not really shown them. I mean, everyone else just kinda wants an alt form because it's expected of them. Only Nightshade questions the necessity of not being what they feel like to be themselves.
I see no need for one. Aren't I sufficient as I am?
There is some really nice bonding here, some really cool sentiments getting passed around, and important lessons for the kids who will be watching this, especially those kids who might relate a bit more than the rest to Nightshade because of that whole explicitly being transgender thing, which means you do get to glom onto them if you want to. Then we get a fucking science montage over here, Nightshade and Tarantulas working together on perfecting the holographic disguise while upbeat funky music plays for them. At the end though, when all seems to be done, Tarantulas makes a desperate bid to invite Nightshade to come with him, feeling that connection that was forged and wanting them to also get away before the next war starts up, telling us how they are 4 million years old and have seen the Autobots and Decepticons fight so much that it feels like an inevitability, which is frankly, holy shit, what a fucking nightmare. 4 million years of being alive and dealing with a never-ending conflict? Yeah, no wonder that Tarantulas is looking to alternate form into a human and live a human life for a bit.
The last 4 million years, I thought that. But I was wrong. Why is now any different?
Nightshade does not feel able to go along with this though, because they have obligations and stuff that grounds them to Witwicky, their family, all of which stops them from being able to just run away. Nightshade then has a talk with their mum about trying to figure out how people so readily accepted Megatron to be on the good side after all the evil that he did, with the mum giving us the great explanation that Decepticons are not inherently evil, and that what defines them is their actions more than who they are. A very good sentiment to express, though she does also say that those Decepticons who live in the shadows are ones who are not using their second chances wisely, almost equating those that hide with those that are imprisoned for continuing to do crime stuff, which I don't think is right.
And the Decepticons that are living in shadows or in prison?
Not everyone uses their second chance wisely.
I mean, we don't know that Tarantulas is doing crimes, it just seems like he's hiding in a cemetery. I don't think that not openly aiding the Autobots and Ghost makes him a bad person. Tarantulas overhears this conversation though, and then at night sneaks up on the parents as they discuss that they need to do something about Nightshade, which leads to Tarantulas kidnapping the parents and running off with them into the woods. While the rest of the family is panicking, Nightshade runs off because they know exactly who did the kidnapping and tracks them down, challenging Tarantulas midway through his little rant.
I will walk free alongside.
Let her go!
We get a bit more context here for Tarantulas, as he reveals that his plan is to use a device to erase the memories of the Molto parents and allow him and Nightshade to run away together. A device that he didn't create, but merely converted from an existing ghost device which was intended to be used on Cybertronians. Yeah, I'm beginning to think that maybe Tarantulas has a point, and the human organization here isn't completely in the clear. Erasing memories is fucked up. It ranks up there with some of the most horrifying things you can do to someone in any fictional world, as memory is part of who we are. It defines our identity and our lived experience, and to take that away is in some way destroying the person while still leaving a shell that can be manipulated, so ghosts potentially having the power to do that is pretty fucking messed up.
Will delete their memories. This device was designed by Ghost for use on Cybertronians.
Nightshade, however, rescues their parents, distracting Tarantulas by setting fire to his webs before then getting surrounded by tons of holographic tarantulas and wrapped up in webbing. Okay, yeah, not the world's greatest rescue, but as Tarantulas prepares once more to erase their parents' memories, Nightshade looks to the owl on top of the tombstone, the owl that led them here, and they realise what their alternate form is, saying the line from the book that they hyperfixated on.
And the sentry owl stood guard, protector of all in need.
So, yeah, they turn into an owl and take Tarantulas the fuck out, using their wings and laser energy blasts from those wings to get a mobile advantage over Tarantulas that allows them to win in a pretty fucking sick fight. Nightshade now also has a cool new regular form as well, which everyone comments on, and then before Bumblebee can take Tarantulas out, Nightshade stops them, defending the fact that Tarantulas was only doing what he felt like he had to, and that he isn't just a regular old Decepticon, that Tarantulas deserves a second chance.
Typical Decepticon. No, Bumblebee.
But everyone deserves a second chance, whether they're human, Autobot, or Decepticon.
Ghost then crops up, revealing to Tarantulas that the Moltobots and the Autobots are also kinda not really 100% good with the human organization either, and so he decides that to return the favour and use his second chance for good, he will lead Ghost away to give the Molto family the chance to escape. It's a heroic moment for this previous villain, which reminds us of the lesson that Earthspark keeps trying to get across, that these Cybertronians have been in conflict for so long that they don't even really think about what life could be like outside of it, and this series is a chance to see that. It also reinforces to Nightshade here that their trust was not misplaced in Tarantulas as a mentor and confidant. All the stuff about identity and how we present not reflecting on our identity but merely being an expression of it, all of which is really important for showcasing that lessons can come from unexpected places and that you might share more than you think with others who seem different, isn't something that came from a villain, it came from someone they could trust.
But Tarantulas!
Please, if this is my second chance, let me take advantage of it.
What can I say? I'm kind of loving this kid's show, and I think they're doing a really good job of incorporating Nightshade's trans identity while also still giving them other explorations of identity outside of just that. All of which is super important and great to see for one of the major characters in a children's animated show. We've got one final episode to go though, and this one is the most important for how it relates to the title of the video, and to the discussion of BBC censorship. The scene we really care about happens during the 2-episode finale for Season 1, titled Home, all about the final takedown of Mandroid as he begins his devious plan to destroy all Cybertronians, and connecting to the theme that the Autobots, Decepticons and Terrans have come to see this planet as more than just a place they are stuck on, but something that is worth protecting as their home. Also, before we get to the scene we care about, can we just talk about how this episode opens with a crazy pit fight between Bumblebee and another Cybertronian? A pit fight surrounded by bloodthirsty humans cheering it on, which is of course boo, forcing robots to fight one another is a bad thing, and this really showcases the cruelty inherent to humanity if we allow it, but also the other Cybertronian fucking Bane slams Bumblebee right before Bumblebee turns it around and pile drives the goddamn son of a bitch. Context aside, that's cool as shit. And I guess I just really wanted to reiterate that this cartoon knows how to make these fights look awesome, and the sound team does a pretty solid job of applying music that lends the appropriate air to those moments. I kinda got ruined a little bit on Transformers, because my first real introduction to it was with the Michael Bay films, and those films suffered a lot from all of the blockbuster action flaws at that time. Terrible scripting, badly interpreted characters, atrocious comedy moments, an absolute abuse of slow time, and fight scenes that cut so much you couldn't tell what the hell was going on because that allowed the CGI to take a break from looking good for a second. Not to say that the Michael Bay films are bereft of any quality, it's more just that I think it put me off Transformers in a way that seeing this as a kid would not have done. I'm just happy that a cool kids show featuring a non-binary character in a positive light is also a really good show too. It's a fantastic showcase that going woke does not in fact mean going broke or abandoning quality. Obviously, I don't know why people would think that would be the case unless they just hate the idea of black people, gay people, trans people, Muslims, immigrants, Hispanics, women being in something that they enjoy, and they desperately want to justify it beyond just being a bigot. Like, everyone has to be really clear when we talk about this stuff. Being anti-woke is just being a bigoted piece of shit with a thin veneer painted over it.
Sorry, did you want to get immersed in our world? Yeah, well, guess what? Fucking pronouns!
Wait, what? What was I? Oh, that's right, the episode. Regardless, a big part of the beginning of this episode is the fact that the Autobots are kind of stepping into a big city for the first time, and they are finally being around people. It's all about them learning how humans think of them, and it's not a 100% positive reaction. While most people do just seem to not really care about them, I mean, Transformers have been transforming around for like decades at this point, and yes, while a lot of the times it's been all war and destruction, most of them are chill, so But like one guy barges right into one of the siblings mid-dance, and that gives all of our Autobots the first real hardcore, on-the-street, random person introduction to discrimination. Oh good.
He probably thought we were causing trouble.
But we were just standing there.
This does sort of suck, because it's the realization that some people are gonna hate them just for being who they are, even if all they are doing is just standing there. But it's good that the show is giving us this introduction to the idea. Because remember, this is for kids. They cannot go too real with it, but this is a serious real world thing that some of the children watching this are gonna deal with. And so letting them have heroes who face the same thing as them is a big step in letting them not feel alone in that struggle. Like, this is actually a really good episode for illustrating all the different ways that, for a lack of a better word, racism can exist. There is the overtly dehumanizing in the way that Jawbreaker, Thrash and Mo get lured into that underground wrestling ring and captured to be used as little more than crowd fodder.
Main event's about to start.
There is the more subtle dehumanizing in the way that Robbie interacts with one of his old friends at the skate park, introducing his sister's Twitch and hashtag to the weird comments from the other kid about his Transformers like he owns them, and also making it very clear that they aren't human and are different, to the angry response and clear distress of Robbie to those sort of statements, that are in effect othering the Transformers that he considers to be his family.
Because they're my family.
But like, not human. They aren't us.
At this skate park as well, the kids stumble upon some vandalism that says Transformers go home. A fact that is upsetting for the Terrans because, well, this is their home as far as they're aware. They were literally born here. And yeah, I know, do you feel that symbolism and allegory battering down your door like some kind of half-giant in the middle of a storm? It's not subtle, but then again, this is a kid's show. Why should it be? And this scene just gets better. Well, sorry, I mean it gets worse, because racism, but better in the sense that I love how Transformers is going here. As the human friend tells them that the vandalism probably just means Decepticons. It doesn't mean them, and then when the Terrans start trying to explain that they're all Cybertronians, and the sign clearly just says Transformers. Also, do you see that perfect inclusion there? The classic racism thing of, oh, this term doesn't apply to you, it just applies to the bad ones. You're one of the good ones, you're okay. Oh, such fucking good writing. Well, the human friend responds by telling them to calm down, before going on to say that his dad says it wasn't cool for the Transformers to invade the Earth, and that, don't worry, he isn't like that.
Relax, Robbie. You know I'm not like that. Can we forget it and...
Nah, we're done here.
This is better racism allegory than I've seen in a lot of adult shows, so I am awestruck by the quality of writing going on here. However, we do get to a kinda scene, which is the Nightshade stuff, wherein Nightshade rescues a person from being mugged, before then interacting with them on a rooftop.
Put me down, put me down!
While the person is initially scared at being picked up by the giant metallic owl, which then turns into a robot, Nightshade notices their bag and sees that they have a pin saying she, they on it. Nightshade comments on them, and then of course interacts with their classic introduction of their name plus pronouns, which eases the concerns of this saved citizen. Because, well, now they know the Transformer who saved them is non-binary, like them. And when you find someone else from the community, it does ease communication and worries by quite a bit.
My pronouns are they, them.
Thanks.
Sam and Nightshade then get to talking, with Sam saying how they are sorry for how they reacted, and it's just that the world is a scary place, not knowing who to trust, but that Sam knows she is safe when she is with her friends or when she meets other non-binary people. You know, those who won't judge them or attack her for being who she is. This also affords an opportunity for Nightshade to learn about the term non-binary. Because up until this point, they've been using they/them pronouns, but haven't actually had a wider connection to that identity beyond it feeling right for them. Sam explains what non-binary means in simple terms, and we get this really nice reaction from Nightshade to them discovering how to refer to this identity they have felt for the first time.
What a wonderful word for a wonderful experience.
It's a really sweet moment that is played in a really sweet and sincere way. It's a fantastic method by which to introduce kids to this, and it doesn't relate to any issues or problems, it's just treated in a positive manner, in a light most favourable by the characters.
I know I'm safe when I'm with my friends or other non-binary people.
Anyway, that's all of that scene, and that's kind of it for us with the show. But I will go out with letting you know that the underground wrestling ring does get destroyed after the squad there with Bumblebee fight Grimlock, the giant T-Rex Dinobot who breathes fire in another cool as fucking shit fight with a horrible context. And then they free Grimlock from the mind control bots of Mandroid, and Grimlock burns the fighting ring to the ground with a little bit of a Jurassic homage thrown in there for fun. Cool stuff. Racism might not be defeated, but this family together can overcome it and work through it, and maybe one day it will be.
If that's how Stevie's gonna behave, he doesn't get me as a friend. It's his loss.
So yeah, that's the Nightshade storyline from a trans perspective anyways, with admittedly a few tangents thrown in there, but what more could you expect from me when I find a show that I legitimately like and ended up watching all of to make this video, even though I didn't really need to? You might be able to guess from that this is going to be a very positive reaction, and you wouldn't be far wrong. I would definitely recommend Transformers if you want to see a really well put in non-binary character. Heck, even two non-binary characters, because we get to see Sam and Nightshade interact at the end there, and that's a big deal because so often shows never have more than a single token trans character, who never gets to talk with another trans character about their identity in a way that they maybe can't with cis people. Which you might remember from the Glee episode I called the Lily Simpson test, in a similarity to the Bechdel test, having two trans characters talk about being trans to each other. I think that this is a great example of how to do trans representation in kids shows right. It's currently at the tippity top of my list of good ones, even above stuff like Danger Force or Paw Patrol, both of which I was also very happy with. If you have a trans kid who could do with seeing themselves reflected in their TV, then you could hardly do better than going to Transformers Earthspark. And you also get a really well-made show that has incredible inclusions of other social issues to boot, something which cannot be so easily said for stuff like Paw Patrol. Now, obviously, there is of course one more thing to cover on this side of things before we flip the coin and deal with the negative, and that is the voice acting for this show. Who voice acted Nightshade and Sam? And is this a case of trans actors getting a break into an industry which can be rather difficult for them to enter? And the answer to that is that yes it is, as Nightshade is voiced by Z Infante, a non-binary person who goes by they, she, he, pretty tight stuff. Meanwhile Sam is voiced by Alicia Mullally, who isn't a trans person from all the digging that I've done on Instagram and Twitter, but does describe themselves as an activist and seems to be very pro-trans representation in general, so you know, 50-50 on a hit rate, but heck, that's not the worst, and I'm honestly pretty happy with the main trans character being voice acted by a trans person. Now, that does bring us to the final point to make before I conclude an outro, which is the fact that yes, this show was in fact censored by the BBC. Wait, what the hell was that? Did that trigger from me saying the BBC? Does the BBC have its own villain thunderstorms? Well, regardless, the BBC... Okay, you can stop now. Rule of threes, the fourth time isn't funny. Did on their iPlayer remove the entire part from that final episode we discussed in Home that covered the usage of the term non-binary and its explanation. See here what I mean.
It's okay. I know I'm safe when I'm with my friends.
It literally cuts straight from Sam just saying her friends to the elevator scene that goes into the underground wrestling fight. They remove so much detail here, and it got people wondering why. Because this was specifically only done on the BBC iPlayer. You could easily find the full scene on every other platform that Transformers Earthspark was present on. Now, I didn't want to go into speculating on why the BBC would do this blind, because I got my suspicions, but that would be all they are. So I emailed the BBC to try and get a comment from them on this, because after all, their specific guidelines state a long list of things that they will censor programs over dependent on their time slots and target audiences, stuff like language, violence, nudity, sex, abusive treatment, alcohol, suicide, tragic events, flashing images, and of course the very popular censorship of hypnotism, exorcism, occultism, and the paranormal. Sorry, hold on, I've got to read this. Demonstrations that purport to be real must not be broadcast before the watershed or on radio when children are particularly likely to be in our audience, or in online content likely to appeal to a significant proportion of children. Paranormal practices for entertainment purposes must not be broadcast when significant numbers of children are likely to be watching. Huh. Wild stuff. They don't want kids to be seeing like ghost hunters and shit. But yeah, as you might notice though, nothing on this list relates whatsoever to non-binary people, or to including the term non-binary in a kid's program as requiring censorship or violating guidelines. Unfortunately for me, I never got an email response from the BBC, and that was months ago, so at this point I suspect it's never coming. However, I am fortunate in the fact that somebody else already emailed them and did get a response, and that they posted that response into the Transformers subreddit. So thank you, an unearthly gay, for getting an answer from them. So, what does the BBC say? Well, what they say is that the discussion around why they removed this half of the scene has not been fully accurate to the reason. Okay, that's basically them saying that people speculating that it was due to the massively entrenched transphobia in the UK that is only getting worse and worse as both political sides appeal to the small group of TERFs that seem to have more pull than the royal fucking family right now. Well, that speculation wasn't actually true. And in fact, they censored the episode because the small section of dialogue did not provide the accuracy of language that they need for their young audience. Specifically, that the definition of non-binary was not comprehensive enough, I guess. They do also say that they left in the first part, when Nightshade and Sam discuss their pronouns, so hey, you know, it's kinda clear that they're still both queers for the kids, right? And okay, let's analyse this response. Firstly, it wasn't a small section of dialogue. It was a bunch of lines that went beyond just the definition and included the joy from Nightshade at discovering this terminology, and also the mention of the safety that trans people find in community. So, strike one.
Or other non-binary people.
Non-binary?
Secondly, the BBC here is claiming that Sam telling Nightshade that being non-binary means not identifying as a boy or a girl is not accurate enough, I guess. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, yeah, finally managed to shove that into one of these videos, guess I'm a real shit video essayist now, non-binary is relating to or being a person who identifies with or expresses a gender identity that is neither entirely male or female. Or if you wanted to put it into more basic layman terms for children, who perhaps don't have that higher level of language comprehension yet, non-binary means not being just a boy or a girl. Which is exactly what got said. So I guess I should clarify that it is both children and BBC producers who don't have a higher level of language comprehension, because otherwise they would have been able to comprehend that this is an equivalent fair usage for kids' media.
People who aren't female or male. Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have assumed.
Strike two. Finally, the reference to the fact that they totally still left in Nightshade and Sam mentioning their pronouns. I mean, come on, how transphobic can this censorship really be? We'll let them say they, them. Well, here's the thing. While people mentioning their pronouns and using those openly is a good thing, and something that I'm very much pro, the non-binary part is really the slam dunk that gives a definitiveness to the identities that these characters have. Clearly stating it and then expressing happiness with that terminology is a huge step in normalizing it, and also giving kids in the audience a word that they can use when referring to themselves and telling others how they feel, as well as finding a community of people that might share in that identity. Removing it kinda removes the entire capstone to the Nightshade trans arc. It turns it from my top recommendation to being worse than Danger Force, because at least Danger Force included a discussion about trans identity, as well as specifically using terms from the community.
Transgender is an umbrella term for people whose gender identity doesn't match the body they were born into.
Okay, wow, you do got this.
It's the BBC hurting a trans character's development, and all the writing that has gone into it from people like Nicole Dubuk, Dale Malinowski, and, oh yeah, May Cat, a queer person who solely wrote that whole Nightshade finding their alt form arc and was involved in the Home episode too, so I guess it's sort of erasing a trans character's development and a trans writer's work at the same time. Strike three, and you know what that means, BBC? You're out! You're done here. I mean, we already knew that the BBC was a hotbed for publishing anti-trans stuff. They've been doing it for years at this point. But I had to take this one to task because of the fact that they tried to pretend that what they did was okay and not just an anti-trans thing. So, you know, fuck the BBC. Anyways, that's my Transformers video. I hope you enjoyed the ride and that you liked what I had to say, or learned something, or found me to be palatable background noise while you did other stuff. If you liked what I did, then you can do all the YouTube stuff that everyone knows at this point, but also consider going and checking out my other videos that should be hopefully popping up in the recommended videos on the side or linked below in the description. I got a lot of stuff covering a lot of different topics that isn't always trans representation, even if that is the bulk of it. And on the topic of non-trans stuff, I'm currently working on a 20-hour epic deep dive of the Riverdale franchise, which if you want to support or just want to support the channel in general, the best way to do so is by going to my Patreon and subscribing there. Those in the $5 and up category should be scrolling past the screen right now, and I really appreciate everyone who does because it lets me keep making the videos that I want to and spend more time on them rather than chasing an uncaring algorithm that would demand the same bland, well-known hit pieces. Like, yeah, I do sometimes want to talk about Family Guy and South Park and maybe Dexter at some point, but then other times I want to go over shit like Transformers, or Love Boat, or Ramsey Nesbitt, because I think that nobody's talked about trans rep in regards to those, and so they deserve their moment in the sun too for discussion. But yeah, my Patreon is the reliable income source that lets me reliably keep making videos. So if you want to see that, then please consider subscribing. It goes a long way to paying bills like food, rent, power, internet, and cat, all of which are essential for me to be able to live and keep doing this stuff. You can also go to my Ko-Fi if you only want to do a one-off payment. That is also just as welcome. Other than all of that, I hope you enjoyed the video, thank you for your time and attention, and have a great queer day.